There are moments in eternity when heaven itself and holds its breath. This is one of those moments. If you're hearing these words right now, if something deep in your spirit pulled you here against all odds, then you need to understand something that will change everything you thought you knew about your life. This is not a coincidence. For months, maybe years, you've felt it, haven't you? That weight pressing against your soul, the unexplained exhaustion, the sudden betrayals, the doors slamming shut just when breakthrough seemed within reach. You've wondered if you were losing your mind, if God had forgotten you, if the isolation was punishment for some hidden sin. But what if I told you that every attack you've endured, every sleepless night, every moment you thought you were fighting alone, was actually proof of something the enemy desperately hoped you'd never discover? What if everything they told you about spiritual warfare was just the beginning? You see, there's a truth hidden in the ancient scrolls, a revelation that makes demons tremble and causes angels to sharpen their swords. The enemy has been working overtime to keep this from reaching you. They've sent distractions, discouragements, even people you trusted to pull you away from this very moment. But they failed. Before we dive deeper into this divine revelation, I want to pause and thank every single one of you who has supported this message through super thanks. Your generosity means more than you know. You're not just donating, you're helping spread light to others who feel alone in their calling. Whether you give or not, I'm deeply grateful for your presence here, your support, your time, your attention. It all matters. And if this message resonates with your soul, go ahead and plant that seed of faith. The kingdom operates on generosity, and every act of giving creates ripples in the spiritual realm. Now, chosen one, are you ready to discover why the darkness has been so afraid of you? Are you prepared to learn about the warriors of light that have been stationed around you since the day you drew your first breath? Are you willing to understand why your pain, your isolation, your battles have all been preparation for this moment? Because what I'm about to reveal to you, what the Most High has kept hidden until now, will explain why you've never been able to live an ordinary life, why you've always felt different, why the attacks have been so relentless, and what happened next made the darkness tremble. They thought your awakening would be quiet. They were wrong. You remember that moment, don't you? That sacred instant when something deep within your spirit shifted, when the veil lifted and you saw beyond the illusion of this world, when you realized there was more to your existence than just paying bills and watching television. That wasn't just personal growth, chosen one. That was a cosmic alarm bell. The moment you opened your spiritual eyes, every demon in hell got a notification. You thought the darkness in your life was random, the sudden betrayals from people you trusted, the doors that slammed shut just as you reached for the handle, the way certain family members turned cold for no reason, the financial attacks that came out of nowhere, the health issues that doctors couldn't explain, the overwhelming exhaustion that sleep couldn't cure. You blamed yourself. You wondered if you were cursed. You questioned if God was punishing you for something you couldn't remember doing. But what if I told you that every single attack, every unexpected obstacle, every moment of isolation was actually a coordinated response to your spiritual awakening? What if the enemy wasn't trying to destroy you randomly, but strategically? Because the truth is this, you didn't just wake up spiritually, you woke up to your identity as a weapon of light in a war zone of darkness. The enemy has surveillance systems you never imagined. The moment your spirit began to stir, the moment you started questioning the lies of this world, the moment you began to seek truth beyond what they wanted you to see, that's when they panicked. That's when the attacks intensified. Not because you were weak, but because you were becoming dangerous. You see, spiritually asleep people don't threaten the kingdom of darkness. They're already captured. They're already controlled. But you, the moment you remembered who you really are, the moment you began to step into your divine calling, you became a problem that needed to be eliminated. They sent people to discourage you. They whispered lies in your mind during your weakest moments. They orchestrated setbacks precisely when you were about to break through. They tried to convince you that your spiritual experiences weren't real, that your calling was just imagination, that your sensitivity to spiritual things was mental illness. But here's what they didn't count on. Your awakening wasn't a phase. It was a signal. And hell has been trembling ever since. Every attack they launched only served to confirm what they feared most. You are exactly who heaven says you are. You carry exactly the power they're afraid of. Your awakening wasn't an accident. It was an appointment with destiny that was written before the foundation of the world. The battle began the moment you awakened, because that's when you stopped being a victim and started being a threat. That's when you transitioned from asleep to alive, from controlled to dangerous, from ordinary to chosen. And they've been trying to put you back to sleep ever since. But chosen one, once you've seen the light, darkness can never satisfy you again. They thought marking you for destruction would be enough. They were wrong. You see, chosen one, there's something the enemy never understood about how heaven operates. When the Most High calls a soul into existence, when he breathes purpose into their lungs and destiny into their DNA, that soul doesn't enter this world unprotected. You didn't slip through the cracks of eternity by accident. You didn't survive what you survived by luck. Before your first heartbeat echoed in your mother's womb, before your name was spoken on earth, it was already written in heaven's military registry. You were assigned a detail, a heavenly detail. Warriors of light who took an oath to guard your life, your calling, your breakthrough, with their very existence. You remember that car accident, don't you? The one where the physics didn't add up, where you should have been crushed, but somehow walked away without a scratch. You remember that moment when the doctors said there was no medical explanation for your recovery. That time when you should have lost everything, but somehow, impossibly, provision appeared out of nowhere. That wasn't coincidence. That was military intervention. Your angels aren't the chubby, harp-playing figures the greeting cards show you. They are warriors. Battle-hardened, lightning-fast, sword-carrying warriors who have been watching over you since before time began. They don't ask permission to move on your behalf. They don't hesitate when the enemy advances. They strike first, they strike hard, and they never, ever leave their post. The enemy thought they could overwhelm you with betrayal. Your angels redirected every backstabbing plot before it reached your heart. The enemy thought they could drain you with financial attacks. Your angels opened doors the enemy didn't even know existed. The enemy thought they could isolate you, make you feel forgotten. Your angels have been whispering comfort into your spirit every single night, even when you couldn't hear them. You're not walking alone, chosen one. You're walking escorted. Every step you take is flanked by warriors who see in dimensions you can't imagine. They see the attacks coming 3 moves ahead. They see the traps being set in your path, and they dismantle them before you even know they existed. They see the enemy's strategy meetings, and they laugh. Because here's what demons never learned. You can't defeat someone who was marked for protection before they were marked for destruction. You can't destroy a life that heaven has classified as mission critical. You can't break someone whose guardian angels have standing orders to ensure their survival. That strength you've always had, that supernatural resilience that kept you standing when others fell, that wasn't just your willpower. That was divine reinforcement flowing through you. That peace you felt in the middle of chaos, that unexplainable calm when everything around you was crumbling, that was the presence of your angelic guard, surrounding you with heaven's own atmosphere. Your angels are not symbolic, chosen one. They are military, and they have never lost a battle on your behalf. The enemy marked you, yes, but heaven marked you first, and heaven's mark always wins. They thought they could use love against you. They were wrong. You remember the moment, don't you? When the eyes you trusted most suddenly went cold. When the voice that once spoke life over you began whispering poison. When the person who knew your heart best decided to weaponize that knowledge against you. It wasn't gradual. It was surgical. It was strategic. And it broke something in you that you thought could never be repaired. But what you didn't know, what the enemy desperately hoped you'd never discover, is that betrayal was never about you. It was about stopping you. The faces that turned against you weren't operating under their own power. The family members who flipped overnight, the friends who grew jealous in silence, the mentors who suddenly withdrew their blessing, they were activated. Like sleeper cells in a spiritual war you didn't even know you were fighting. The enemy had been watching, waiting, studying your vulnerabilities. And when you started stepping into your calling, when your light began threatening their darkness, they pulled every string they had access to. They didn't betray you by accident, they were activated. But heaven intercepted their permission slip. You see, chosen one, demons don't always show up with horns and pitchforks. Sometimes they arrive wearing the faces of people you've prayed for. Sometimes they speak through voices you've loved. The enemy knows that a frontal attack would only make you stronger, so they tried the backdoor approach. They tried to break you from the inside, using the very relationships that were supposed to shelter you. But your angels saw what you couldn't see. They watched the meetings in dark places where your name was mentioned with venom. They heard the conversations where strategies were planned to dim your light. They witnessed the moment when jealousy opened the door and let something sinister walk through, and every single time, heaven stepped in. That sudden peace you felt when you should have been devastated, that was angelic intervention. The way you found strength when betrayal should have destroyed you, that was divine reinforcement. The supernatural ability you discovered to love people who wounded you without becoming bitter, that wasn't your natural response, that was the Spirit of the Most High flowing through you like a river of grace. The enemy thought they could turn your greatest strength, your capacity to love, into your greatest weakness. They thought wrong. Every person who was sent to break you only revealed the unbreakable nature of your spirit. Every relationship that was supposed to destroy you only proved that your foundation was built on something they could never touch. You didn't fight fire with fire. You transcended the battlefield entirely. And now you understand why certain people had to exit your life so abruptly. It wasn't punishment, it was protection. Your angels knew that some connections were becoming contaminated, that some relationships were being used as highways for spiritual attack. So they orchestrated the removals. They allowed the masks to fall. They let you see who was really for you and who was simply in position to monitor your progress. The loneliness you felt wasn't abandonment, it was purification. Because what's coming next in your life requires a clean slate, a pure atmosphere, and relationships that can handle the weight of your true calling. The betrayers served their purpose. They revealed the counterfeit so you could recognize the authentic. They showed you what conditional love looks like so you'd never settle for it again. Your angels turned their weapon into your wisdom. They thought your sleep would be their hunting ground. They were mistaken. You know those dreams, don't you? The ones that jolt you awake at 3 a.m. with your heart pounding like a war drum. The shadow figures standing at the foot of your bed. The snakes slithering through rooms that felt familiar yet wrong. The endless hallways with doors that wouldn't open, no matter how hard you pushed. The faceless people who spoke your name with voices like broken glass. For years, you've carried the weight of those nightmares, wondering if your mind was betraying you. You've questioned your sanity, blamed your diet, tried sleeping pills, even avoided sleep altogether. But what if I told you that every terrifying dream, every night terror, every moment you woke up gasping for air, was actually a victory report from the battlefield? While your body rested, your angels fought, and your survival is their victory. You see, the enemy made a fatal miscalculation. They assumed that when your conscious mind surrendered to sleep, you would be defenseless. They thought the dream realm was their territory, their hunting ground where they could plant seeds of fear, confusion, and despair without resistance. What they didn't understand is that the Most High never leaves his chosen ones unguarded, not even in the depths of unconsciousness. Every nightmare you've endured was a spiritual attack being intercepted. Every terrifying image was a demon's plan being exposed before it could manifest in your waking life. Your dreams weren't showing you what was going to happen to you. They were showing you what your angels were preventing from happening to you. Think about it. How many times have you had a dream about betrayal, only to discover later that someone close to you was indeed planning to betray you? How many times have you dreamed of danger, only to find yourself mysteriously avoiding that exact situation in real life? Those weren't coincidences. Those were divine intelligence reports, delivered through the only channel the enemy couldn't completely block: your subconscious mind. The spiritual realm operates on frequencies that your physical eyes cannot perceive, but your spirit sees everything. While you slept, battles raged around your bed. Angelic warriors stood guard as demonic forces tried to plant seeds of depression, fear, and hopelessness in your dreams. Every time you woke up disturbed but alive, every time you shook off a nightmare and chose to keep fighting, that was proof that your angels had won another battle. The enemy wanted to use your dreams as a weapon against you. Instead, God turned them into a warning system. Those shadow figures you saw, they were real entities being exposed by divine light. Those rooms you couldn't escape, they were spiritual prisons your angels were dismantling before you could ever be trapped there in real life. Those voices calling your name in the darkness, they were demons trying to claim you, being silenced by the voice of the Almighty. You didn't just survive those nightmares, you conquered them. Every morning you chose to rise, every day you refused to let fear control your life, every moment you continued to believe in your purpose despite the terror that visited your sleep. You were declaring victory over forces that thought they could break you in your most vulnerable state. The attacks in your dreams weren't random, they were strategic. The enemy knew that if they could corrupt your rest, they could weaken your spirit. If they could steal your peace and sleep, they could rob your strength for the battle ahead. But they underestimated the power of divine protection. They underestimated you. While your body rested, your angels fought, and every sunrise you witnessed was their victory celebration. They thought your silence meant surrender. They were catastrophically wrong. You see, chosen one, while they were busy weaving their webs of whispers, crafting their cocktails of curse and complaint, something magnificent was happening in the spiritual realm. Every jealous word they spoke behind closed doors, every hex they hired, every midnight candle they lit with your name carved in wax, it all came back to sender. But here's what they didn't understand about you. Here's what made them so furious they could taste metal in their mouths. You didn't even acknowledge their attacks. You didn't fight fire with fire. You didn't throw spells back or gather your own circle of revenge. You simply existed. And your existence became their nightmare. They expected screaming matches. They anticipated public confrontations. They were banking on you breaking down, melting down, having emotional meltdowns that would validate their narrative about your instability. But instead of giving them the circus they craved, you gave them something that terrified them to their core: divine indifference. You see, when someone is aligned with the Most High, when someone walks in true spiritual authority, they don't need to prove their power. They don't need to defend their position. They don't need to explain their calling to people who are spiritually blind. Your silence wasn't weakness, chosen one. Your silence was the sound of someone who outranks their accusers. Think about it. When a general walks past gossiping foot soldiers, does he stop to argue with them? When a judge enters the courtroom, does she debate her authority with the defendants? When the sun rises, does it explain itself to the shadows? Number authority doesn't argue, power doesn't plead, divinity doesn't defend. And that's exactly what drove them to madness. They sent midnight prayers against you. You sent morning worship toward heaven. They sent bitter complaints to anyone who would listen. You sent gratitude to the one who always hears. They sent curses wrapped in concern, poison disguised as prayer. You sent nothing back at all, because you were too busy receiving downloads from dimensions they couldn't access. Your peace became their persecution. Your joy became their judgment. Your progress became their prison. Every time they looked at you thriving despite their attacks, it was like staring into a mirror that reflected their own spiritual poverty. They couldn't understand how someone could be so unbothered by their drama, so unaffected by their darkness, so unmoved by their manipulation. But here's the secret they never figured out. Here's the revelation that would have saved them years of wasted energy if they had spiritual eyes to see it. You weren't ignoring them because you were weak. You were ignoring them because you were strong. You weren't silent because you had nothing to say. You were silent because you had someone higher to speak to. You didn't argue with the darkness. You outranked it. And in that divine silence, in that holy indifference, in that sacred refusal to descend to their level, you became untouchable. Not because you built walls, but because you built wings. Not because you learned to fight, but because you learned to fly. They sent spells. You sent silence. And silence, chosen one, was the loudest rebuke they ever received. They thought silence would break you. It made you bulletproof. You remember that season, don't you? When the phone stopped ringing, when invitations dried up like leaves in winter, when every door you approached seemed to slam shut before you could even knock. Friends vanished. Family grew distant. Even the mirror seemed to reflect a stranger back at you. You called it abandonment. Heaven called it boot camp. While you were crying in the dark, wondering what you had done wrong, the Most High was pulling you into his war room. You thought you were being punished for some hidden sin, some failure you couldn't name. But God wasn't disciplining you. He was quarantining you, not from blessing, from distraction. See, chosen one, when heaven has a warrior to prepare, when the divine has a mission that requires supernatural strength, isolation isn't cruelty, it's strategy. You weren't being cast aside. You were being cast iron, forged in the furnace of solitude until every weakness burned away and only unbreakable faith remained. That lonely apartment, that empty calendar, those long nights when sleep wouldn't come and silence felt like a weight on your chest. You thought God had forgotten your address, but he was building a fortress around your spirit. Brick by brick, prayer by prayer, tear by tear. They tried to reach you during those months, didn't they? The enemy sent messengers, fake opportunities, toxic relationships wrapped in shiny paper. People who promised to fill the void but would have drained your very soul. But something supernatural happened. You couldn't connect. Calls went to voicemail. Plans fell through. Doors remained locked. You called it bad luck. Angels call it perfect timing. Because while the world was spinning in chaos, while others were drowning in distractions and surface-level connections, you were learning the language of eternity. In that sacred silence, your spiritual ears opened, your discernment sharpened like a blade. Your connection to the divine became a direct line that no earthly static could interrupt. Heaven wasn't hiding you from people. Heaven was hiding people from you. Every person who didn't call, every invitation that never came, every door that stayed closed. Those weren't rejections. Those were divine redirections. God was protecting your frequency from interference while He fine-tuned your spiritual reception. You emerged from that wilderness season different, didn't you? Stronger, clearer, unshakable. What used to upset you couldn't even register anymore. Drama bounced off you like rain off steel. Manipulation fell flat because you could see through fog now. Fear tried to grip you, but found nothing to hold on to. That isolation wasn't punishment, precious one. It was preservation. You weren't being buried. You were being planted in silence while heaven built your armor. And when you finally stepped back into the light, you weren't the same person who went in. You were fortified, protected, unbreakable. The enemy thought they had you cornered in that lonely place. They didn't realize they had walked you straight into God's armory. Demons fled when you didn't flinch. They thought fear would break you. It backfired. You see, chosen one, there's something the enemy miscalculated about you. They studied your weaknesses, mapped out your vulnerabilities, and launched their most devastating attacks. They sent confusion to cloud your mind. They hurled exhaustion at your spirit. They whispered terror into your dreams. They expected you to crumble. They expected you to run. They expected you to beg for mercy. But you did something that made hell itself take a step back. You stood still, not in defeat, not in resignation, but in the kind of supernatural composure that only comes from knowing who you belong to. While storms raged around you, while betrayals cut deep, while doors slammed shut in your face, you remained unmoved, and that terrified them. Because demons don't fear noise, chosen one. They don't fear screaming or fighting or desperate prayers. They've heard it all before. What they fear is spiritual composure. What makes them tremble is a soul that refuses to be shaken. You weren't loud, you were lethal, and they didn't see it coming. Think about it. Every time they launched an attack, expecting you to break, you absorbed it like light absorbing darkness. Every betrayal that should have destroyed your faith only deepened your roots. Every financial blow that should have made you panic only taught you to trust in unseen provision. Every sleepless night that should have driven you to despair only connected you closer to the one who never slumbers. You became their worst nightmare, a chosen one who wouldn't flinch. The enemy operates on fear, chaos, and reaction. Their entire strategy depends on making you lose your composure, making you act out of panic, making you forget who you are. But when you stood in that supernatural stillness, when you refused to be moved by what you could see, you disrupted their entire operation. You didn't fight fire with fire. You transcended the battlefield. There's a courtroom in heaven, and your case was being heard. The accuser was presenting evidence against you, listing every failure, every moment of doubt, every time you fell short. But then something shifted. The judge looked at how you handled the storm. He saw you standing in faith when everything said run. He saw you trusting when logic said quit. He saw you blessing when flesh said curse. And the gavel came down. Case dismissed. You weren't trying to be a warrior. You were just being faithful. You weren't trying to intimidate demons. You were just trusting God. But in that simple act of spiritual composure, you became something the darkness had never encountered before. A chosen one who couldn't be shaken. A believer who wouldn't be moved. A soul so anchored in divine truth that hell's storms became nothing more than background noise. The demons fled not because you fought them, but because you refused to acknowledge their power. You didn't give them the reaction they needed to survive. Fear feeds demons. Panic empowers them. But your peace, your unwavering faith, your supernatural calm in the storm, that starved them. You didn't fall. You rose. You didn't run. You stood. You didn't flinch. You smiled. And in that moment, chosen one, you discovered something that will change everything. Your greatest weapon isn't your voice. It isn't your prayers. It isn't even your faith. It's your refusal to be anything other than who God called you to be, even when hell itself demands otherwise. They thought the accusations would stick. They were wrong. Right now, in this very moment, there's a courtroom session happening in the heavenly realms that has your name written across every document. The accuser of the brethren has been working overtime, filing charge after charge against you. Every mistake you've made, every moment of weakness, every time you stumbled in your faith. He thought he had an airtight case. But here's what the enemy didn't count on. Your angels didn't just show up to defend you, they showed up with evidence. Picture this divine scene. Chosen one. The accuser stands before the throne, pointing his crooked finger at you, rattling off every failure, every sin, every moment you felt unworthy. His voice echoes through the courts of heaven like thunder, demanding judgment, demanding punishment, demanding your destruction. But then your defending angel rises, and the atmosphere shifts. One by one, they present the evidence of your heart. Every tear you cried in secret when no one was watching. Every time you chose forgiveness when revenge would have felt sweeter. Every moment you got back up when staying down would have been easier. Every prayer you whispered in the dark when hope seemed dead. The courtroom grows silent as heaven reviews your file. Not the file the enemy brought, the real file. The one that shows every act of love you performed when no one was looking. Every time you blessed those who cursed you. Every moment you chose faith over fear, even when fear seemed more logical. And then, the gavel falls. The voice of the Most High reverberates through every realm. Case dismissed, charges dropped, accusations overruled. But it doesn't stop there. The divine justice of heaven doesn't just clear your name, it reverses the judgment back onto your accusers. Every lie spoken over you is now speaking victory into your life. Every curse sent your way has boomeranged back to its sender with divine force. Every trap they set has become their own snare. The very weapons they forged to destroy you have become the instruments of their own defeat. You didn't just win this case, chosen one. You exposed the entire corrupt system that was working against you. Right now, as I speak these words, there are spiritual warrants being issued against every force that came against you without cause. Divine subpoenas are being served to every person who tried to assassinate your character. Heavenly restraining orders are being placed on every demonic entity that thought they could torment you indefinitely. The same angels that defended you in court are now the bailiffs ensuring the judgment is enforced. And here's the most beautiful part of this divine justice. You didn't have to defend yourself. You didn't have to prove your innocence. You didn't have to fight for your vindication. All you had to do was remain faithful while heaven built your case. The verdict is in. Heaven said, not guilty. And now your enemies are trembling at the judgment seat. The courtroom of heaven has ruled in your favor, and no earthly court can overturn what the divine has decreed. This is the season your angels go public. They thought if they kept you hidden long enough, you'd disappear into the shadows forever. They were wrong. You see, chosen one, there's something the enemy never understood about divine timing. They assumed that because your angels worked in secret, because your protection came without fanfare, because your victories happened quietly behind closed doors, that somehow you were forgotten, that somehow you didn't matter, that somehow your season would never come. But what they failed to realize is that every silent season was preparation, every hidden blessing was accumulation, every secret intervention was God building a case in the courts of heaven with your name written in gold. The same angels who carried your cries in silence are now carrying your crown in public. For years, decades maybe, you've watched others get the recognition, the opportunities, the open doors. You've seen people with half your heart and a fraction of your faithfulness walk into rooms that seemed locked to you. You've wondered if your obedience was invisible, if your sacrifice was unnoticed, if your prayers were falling on deaf ears. But heaven was watching. Heaven was recording. Heaven was preparing a reversal so complete, so public, so undeniable that when it happens, no one will be able to question whose hand was behind it. This is the season your angels go public. The warriors who once blocked spiritual assassins in the darkness are now clearing pathways in broad daylight. The guardians who whispered warnings in your spirit are now orchestrating divine connections that will leave you breathless. The protectors who shielded you from harm are now positioning you for honor. You're about to witness something that will make the enemy regret every attack they sent your way, because every weapon they formed, every trap they set, every person they sent to discourage you has become evidence in heaven's courtroom, and the verdict is in. Divine vindication is coming. As we close this divine revelation together, I need you to carry 3 unshakable truths with you as you walk forward into your destiny. First, remember this. Every attack you've survived was proof of your importance in God's kingdom. The enemy doesn't waste ammunition on territories that don't matter. Your battles have been intense because your calling is significant. Every wound has been preparation, every setback has been a setup, and every tear you've shed has been collected in heaven's bottles. Second, understand that your angels are not seasonal workers, they are permanent assignments. They didn't protect you just to abandon you now. The same divine forces that carried you through your darkest valleys are the ones escorting you into your brightest victories. Your protection is not temporary, it's eternal. And third, never forget that isolation was never God's plan for you. You may have walked through lonely seasons, but you were never truly alone. Even now, as you hear these words, there's a community of believers who understand your journey, who face similar battles, who are ready to stand with you in prayer and fellowship. You are not alone. God is still working in your life, even when you can't see it. Even when the path seems unclear, even when the breakthrough feels delayed, heaven is moving on your behalf. Your story is still being written, and the best chapters are yet to come. But let me ask you this, knowing what you know now about your divine protection, about the angels assigned to your life, about the battles they've already won for you, how will you walk differently? How will you speak differently? How will you trust differently? Let us pray together now, as a family of faith. Heavenly Father, I place my hand upon every person hearing these words right now. Lord, you see them in their secret places, in their moments of doubt, in their seasons of waiting. You know every tear they've cried, every prayer they've whispered, every time they've wondered if you'd forgotten them. Father, I ask you to flood their hearts with the revelation of your unfailing love. Let them feel, in this very moment, the presence of their guardian angels. Strengthen their faith, renew their hope, and remind them that they are fearfully and wonderfully made for such a time as this. Open doors that no man can shut. Make crooked paths straight. Turn their mourning into dancing and their sorrow into joy. Let them see with spiritual eyes the divine protection that surrounds them. Give them supernatural peace that surpasses all understanding. Lord, bless their finances, heal their relationships, restore their health, and establish their steps. Let them walk in the confidence of knowing they are chosen, they are covered, and they are deeply loved. In Jesus' mighty name, we pray. Amen. Asterisk. Beloved, I want to hear from you. In the comments below, share what this message has meant to your heart. Tell us how you've seen God's protection in your life. Ask for prayer if you need it. This community is here for you. Your testimony might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this message has touched your spirit, please share it with someone who needs to be reminded that they're not fighting alone. There are chosen ones in your circle who need to hear these words, who need to understand their divine protection. Be the vessel God uses to deliver hope to another hurting heart. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel and ring that notification bell. We're building a community of believers who understand the power of divine protection, who know what it means to be chosen, and who refuse to walk this journey alone. Thank you for staying with me through this entire message. Thank you for opening your heart to receive what heaven wanted to speak over your life today. You matter more than you know, you're loved beyond measure, and your angels are still on assignment. Until we meet again, walk in the confidence of knowing you are divinely protected, eternally loved, and perfectly positioned for the breakthrough that bears your name. Be blessed, chosen one. Your victory is already written.